if you have a 1989 to 1995 Toyota 4Runner or pickup, and you're having issues with the factory oil pressure gauge, I think this video is for you. So basically, this is my 1992 Toyota 4Runner V6. I've had issues with the factory oil pressure gauge for a while now. I've swapped out gauges, I've swapped out sensors, and I've not been able to get a reliable indication. So I figured I would do an aftermarket gauge, but I didn't want a gauge pod around anywhere in the interior. I kind of like the simplicity of the 90s interiors like this. So basically what I did is I took this gauge. It's I'll have more information about it and a link in the description for it, but it's basically just a basic 3-wire gauge, oil pressure gauge, electronic. We got power, ground, sensor. It's 1 wire, so it can use the factory wiring harness in the truck or 4Runner. Just a 1-wire sender. The only modifications you have to do to the truck itself, excluding the cluster, is you need to rethread the sender for let's see here, 1/8 28 BSP. I just used a die and I just recut the threads. You can probably find an adapter so you can just screw it on, but that's the route I went. And you'll need to cut off your factory connector for your oil pressure sensor and just install just the basic spade, you know, nothing fancy. As far as how well it works, so this indicates from 0 to 150 psi. It has a low pressure indication for it has a little light that comes on anything below 18 psi. We'll talk about that more later and what you can do with that. It's blue digits. You can buy this in red as well. I swapped out the LED display, which I'll show later in the video, for if you want a custom color that maybe fits the interior more or better. I chose green because it matches the backlight. Now, one disadvantage to this is it does not dim. So the blue's a little intense. So that's another reason why I went with green. Green is, or at least the displays that I found, it's pretty soft, not too annoying during the night. But so here's a closer look. So I 3D printed a bezel adapter, so it fits into the factory bezel without any modifications other than removing the factory oil pressure gauge and soldering some wires on the back of the instrument cluster. Pretty basic install. You'll notice the 2 red LEDs. I hooked those up to the circuit in the cluster, the circuit in the aftermarket gauge. For anything below 18 psi, it turns on. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have hooked that up, because on the you see it's indicating 0, but if I rev it up, you know, it comes up pretty quick. But so on the 3BZ engine, idle oil pressure warm is around 4 psi. This gauge it is not the greatest at lower pressures. It basically indicates 0 to 4 at idle. I have confirmed that it does work, or I mean, I have confirmed that I do have oil pressure with a inline oil pressure gauge. So when you install this yourself, you're probably not going to want to hook up those LEDs unless you want to have an annoying light come on every time you idle. You'll also notice I have a voltmeter, same brand, same display. It also has an indication LEDs. Anything below 11, I think it's 11.5 volts, it'll come on. There, it came on for a split second there. It's basically the same process for installing the voltmeter as it is for the oil pressure. So yeah, in this video I'm gonna go over swapping the LED display, printing the adapter, and assembling it all. I have another cluster that we'll work on. I'm not going to do a video. I'm not going to show how to pull the cluster. I really don't want to pull it back out of my truck or 4Runner because it's just a pain. There are videos on YouTube on how to pull these instrument clusters out, so it shouldn't be too hard. It's pretty straightforward. Alright, so this is the gauge. It is a Water Witch oil pressure gauge, automotive. It's, you know, very made in China. It's cheap though. Not much comes in the box. You basically just get the gauge, the wire, sender, and some primitive instructions. Very simple though. As you can see, you got red, goes to your ignition switch, black to ground, and then green to the sender itself. I'll show how you wire that into the cluster later. I 3D printed these little adapters, so we got with indication LEDs and without. These prints didn't turn out super great. I'll have a link to the STL in the description so you can print them yourself. I might print them and sell them if anybody's interested, but yep. And then we got displays. So Amazon, I couldn't find any displays in a reasonable amount of time to swap the factory one or the aftermarket gauge display with, but I found these. These are little Arduino displays. They come on a circuit board, as you can see. You'll notice they are 4-digit, and these are 3 digits. This is out of one of these gauges. There is an extra hole in the gauge itself, so it will accept the 4-digit display. It just doesn't use that 4th digit. I'll have a link to these in the description. They come in 5 colors. I think it's blue, red, yellow, green, and white. But I'll show you how to desolder this and swap it into the new display. Alright, so when you get these, you're going to want to look them over, make sure everything's there, make sure the wires aren't pulled out of the connector. I've had that. You just want to make sure it's good. You're probably going to want to, in fact, get a battery, hook it to power, and make sure it works. So no sender's hooked up, so it's just going to read 150 psi. If you ground the sensor lead, it will read 0. Takes a second. There you go, 0, and the little warning indication came on. So that's a good functional check. Checking the sender, not really much you can do except just install it on the engine. I mean, you can do that if you want. I haven't had any bad ones yet out of the couple that I've done. So, opening it. Need some basic tools. Take your wiring harness off. Take off the little adjusting ring or a mounting ring, and then you're going to see that it is it's a aluminum ring that's just crimped over the plastic housing. So you're going to have to take a pair of pliers or wire cutters, and you're going to basically just get under the lip and tear it. And you just work it off. Just work around the edges. There you go. Covers off. Alright, so once you got the cover off, there's 4 screws, 2 inside, 2 outside. Just going to take those out. After you get the outside ones off, the guts will fall out, and you'll just take the 2 screws off the outside. And it just, oh, sorry. There are 2 more on the inside that hold the bezel. And there you go. You are left with the innards of the aftermarket gauge. The rest is pretty much trash. Save 2 screws. They are going to secure this to the bezel, these 2 points here. Now, so I'm going to show you how to swap out the original display, the blue, with a different display. Now you can just go ahead and just run it as is, and it'll fit in the 3D print. Of course, there's some edges you can see, but it's some better light. And you can just run it like that. Now, so if you want to just run the factory display, you can just kind of skip this. Also, this process of installing this gauge it's going to be identical for the voltmeter. The PCBs are actually identical. But yeah, so you can just skip this part of the video if you want, and just go straight to installing the bezel and getting it in the cluster. But for the people that want to modify this a little bit more, make it more custom, keep watching. Alright, so we have six LEDs. These ones are for the backlight, and then this one is for the warning indication for low oil pressure. I prefer to just desolder these with the way you can probably do like a clear bezel, like use a clear filament, and you can get it to shine through, and I don't know, that might look cool. but I prefer to just not have those. So we're just gonna desolder them. This is kind of a crude method for removing these LEDs, these surface mount LEDs, but it gets the job done. So you're just gonna add solder to one side, add solder to the other side. This works best with leaded solder. Just make sure not to breathe the fumes. And then they just pop off. All right. Now you could optionally leave that red LED in its normal location, and if you print a red bezel, I'm sorry, not a red bezel, but a clear bezel using clear filament, it could light up the bezel itself, which would probably look pretty cool. And it'll give you your indication, and you won't have to do any other modifications. I'm probably just going to suggest just to omit, because the way these Toyota engines run is this indication is going to come on whenever you're at idle, either with the 3.0 V6 or the 22 RE. They just have very low idle oil pressure from the factory, but I figured just give you the option. So we got our LEDs off. Now to swap the display, we're going to need to desolder the factory display. I do have a desoldering gun, but it doesn't work very well, and I figure most people don't have one. So I'm going to show you just kind of a crude method for desoldering these. You don't have to worry about heat too much with LEDs. Like, you're not going to cook them too easily. Just make sure you got a soldering iron that has an adjustable temperature and it's not too high. Basically, you're just going to get solder on all the pads or pins, and then you're going to grip it, and you're going to basically use your fingers to kind of pry. You can use a screwdriver too, but you're going to pry the goal is to pry the display off the board. You want to have tension on it while you heat all the pins, and you're going to want to just do it quick. There we go, it's starting to go. Almost there. You see how you use your fingers as like leverage to take it off. There we go. Display's off. All right, now you need to use solder wick and some flux. You need to clear all these holes. Now, if you have a solder sucker, I mean, this is like way easier. You don't have to worry about the silk screen too much. But you just want to make sure all your holes are clear. It may take a couple tries. Like, I think a couple of these are going to give me issues. Yeah. So just apply more solder on the problem holes. You know, part of it is the fact that this is probably assembled with lead-free solder. All right, that looks pretty good. So you just want to paper towel or cotton, doesn't really matter. Isopropyl alcohol, and just clean the flux off. There we go. Look pretty clear. But yeah, that's what you want. You just want clear holes. All right, now to desolder. Of course, you won't have to do this if you just buy displays like off eBay or something like that. I was impatient. I wanted to get something quick, so I just bought these Arduino displays off Amazon. But anyways, for desoldering them, same method. Get some solder on. I don't have a sponge. Alright, same thing with the fingers, and just heat all your pads. It's a little bit harder on these since there's an extra pin. There we go. There's one side. I want to kind of do it quick too because it starts to heat up. Alright, yeah, a little too hot for the fingers. So you just get a little screwdriver. I mean, this is basically, it's the same exact process as for the other display, so you can just kind of skip this if you want. But very crude method. It'd be best if you had a desoldering gun. Ooh, it's toasty. I want to try not to bend the pins. If you do, it's not the end of the world. You can bend them back. You just don't want to rip them off. Almost there. There we go, that's one side. It's best if you get soldered to just bridge them. There we go. And clean off all your old solder. And there you go. Just want to make sure they're not bent. All the old solder's off so they slide in the holes easier. Alright, so here's your board. Alright, now notice your little dots at the bottom. You want to make sure the display lines up with that. So dots there, dots there. No, one of them still bound up. Alright, well, we can just heat up that one. There we go. Oop, problem. Bent a pin. Not a big deal, we can just straighten it back out. Of course, this would be easier if you just bought displays, but anyways, so got our dots lined up. It's level with the PCB. It's seated. All right, now we can go ahead and just solder it on. Alright, so we got our new display in. Okay, got the flux cleaned off for the most part. No points are bridged. Alright, we're good. Alright, now for the bezel. So I'll show you how to install the bezel with the indicator LEDs built into it. So basically it's just going to fit over the display. I designed it a little too tight, so you might have to trim out the edges a little bit with an X-Acto knife to get it to fit. But it's basically, it's going to be a pretty snug fit. But it just fits over the display, like so. And there you go. Alright. Now for your 2 screws that you saved. They're just going to go in the corners here. There you go. Oh, one other thing. So after getting the display in, it'd actually probably be a good idea to go ahead and test it. There you go, works. So this one's clear for white. Oh, no, we're missing a digit. Missing the 1 there. Let's take it back apart. See if we missed any solder joints. No, they're all good. Let's try it again. There we go. 150 and 0 if you ground the sense lead. All right. So we're good. All right, now for the indicator LEDs. So it's just going to use your generic 5mm LEDs. These are just, you know, some generic ones off Amazon. It doesn't really matter what you use. We'll just go with these red ones. Alright, and they're just going to stick in these holes. Now what you want to do is you want to make sure your positive is in one, is going one way, and your negative is going the other way. And you want to make sure they're both the same. Like so. So you got your... Oh, these LEDs don't work too well. Let's go with some different LEDs. Leads aren't long enough on these. Alright, let's go with green. Probably not the best to indicate something's wrong, but there we go. Alright, now you want to bend them over towards each other. Like so. Make sure they're lined up. Perfect. Get a little solder. There you go. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take some small gauge wire. It's not, doesn't have to be super precise, but you're basically running from the LEDs to these pads here. That's where the original indicator was. going to want to go around the side. And I don't know which one of these pads is positive and which one's negative. So we're just going to try. We'll do a little trial and error. Around. There we go, got them stripped. Get some tweezers. These will do. Get some fresh solder on those pads. Doesn't have to be perfect. All right, so we got that hooked up. Make sure nothing's bridging. Let's see, where'd the control board go? There it is. Also, when you put these together, it can go on either way. Just make sure the connector is opposite of the dots. Get our battery. Alright, got our display. Let's see if they come on. They do. So we got it right the first try. So once again, anything under 18 PSI, these lights will come on. All right, so the next step. All right, so this is the finished product. Something like that. It's a kind of a primitive first run. Get a gauge. My pile of dead gauges. So the way this sits in the instrument cluster is it's going to sit right above the temperature gauge. This is an oil pressure gauge with a similar mechanism. And they're going to sit right above each other. And the PCB, with the way it is, it will contact the needle. So what you got to do is you got to take off a little bit of the PCB, just the Dremel. Nothing crazy. Now there is, so you're basically going to take it all the way up to this connector here. You can kind of see where it's been ground on a little bit. And you're going to take it all the way up to there. Now on these displays, if you want to keep the backlight, you're going to have to relocate this resistor. You can just desolder it, move it to the side, do a little jumper lead. In fact, I'll just do it for, I'll show you guys how to. So desolder it, just like the LEDs. Some fresh solder. Now this LED, I'm sorry, this resistor powers the LEDs for the backlight. So you only need to do this if you want to try and use those backlight LEDs. Which in this instance I'm not, but I'm doing this to show you how to maintain that functionality. Sorry if this is out of frame here and there. I'm still learning this camera stuff. There we go. Make sure you're not bridging anything. Pretty close to that other resistor there. Spin that out of the way. There we go. So basically what we've done is the original trace went from here to this diode. So what we did is we used a piece of wire and instead came around from this direction, because when we grind this, it's basically going to take out half that resistor and make it unfunctional. Now once again, this is only if you want to reuse the backlight. So put it back together. Get our Dremel-like device. You can use anything. You can use a sander. You can just use sandpaper and a block. It doesn't have to be super precise, but here we go. Battery's dead, but we got it. Yeah, I think we got it. And of course, wear safety glasses or squint. And don't breathe the dust that comes off this. That's done. So we got it trimmed, we got it mounted in our bezel adapter. Let's get our instrument cluster up here. So this is the SR5 instrument cluster. Of course, this is going to work if you have the base instrument cluster that doesn't have an oil pressure gauge to begin with. To open this, so you're going to want to get a pick or a flathead screwdriver. And you're basically going to start up in the corner and you're going to pry just a little bit. Get some tension on it, and then you're going to release these snaps. There's 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom. So a little tension, release, a little bit more tension as it starts to come out, and just work your way along. Okay, so we got the top. Work it out a little bit. for the bottom. Bottom's a little bit easier. You can just grab the top and push off the pin here. This one's been apart, so it's pretty easy to take apart. But you tab there, 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 and there. So you'll put some tension on it, you'll push your tab in, push the next one in, next one in, next one in. And then take it off. This is also probably a good time to clean out all the dust. These kits from O'Reilly's or AutoZone are pretty good. They're headlight restoration kits. They're good for basically restoring any plastic, so you can you know, take care of any scratches or anything that you have on the faceplate. So that's to the side for now. All right. So this is our oil pressure gauge. It is secured with 2 screws in the back. Those screws also act as contacts. And then it just fell out once you take those screws out. So you probably don't want it to fall if you want to save it. But anyways, that's our opening. Now for the wiring. So what you're going to do is get your wires, thread them through one of the holes in the back, doesn't matter which one. And then it's just big enough to fit the harness. And you just want to guide it in. There you go. And then you want to leave about this much. You want to be able to work on it, you know, put it together, take it apart. So right about there. Now back to our faceplate. So you're going to take your new oil pressure gauge, and it's just going to fit snugly into the bezel. Like so. And it'd probably be best if you glued it. It's super light, it fits pretty tight, so you should be good just leaving it as is. See, it's not going anywhere. So oil pressure gauge in. Now we can put it on the back, or put it back on. So hook up your wire, line up your trip reset. Now you want to leave this, you can pull the wire out like as you push it in, but you kind of want to leave some in case you need to take it back apart. So what I like to do is just leave that length in there and make sure it just folds to the side as you put it together. I know it's probably hard to see, but and you want to make sure it doesn't contact any of the temperature gauge or anything like that. So once you get the wire sorted, just push the top of the faceplate back on. There you go. Gauge is installed. Now for the wiring. Okay, so it may vary a little bit. So this is a mechanical speedometer. Some of these have digital speedometers. The contacts should be the same though on each one, the ones that you need. So basically you're going to need some proper wire strippers. Want to trim it, you know, leave yourself a couple inches. There we go. And then we need to attach the wires. So our positive is here. See a little positive there. Our sense is going to be here next to the, let's label as oil, and then our ground is going to be over here. It's not labeled, but it's on the other side of this diode. Inner wires, and then I already installed this once, so these pads are already tinned, but you're going to want to just go ahead and just tin them and get some fresh solder on that point there. And then so green, which is sense, it's going to go here. Positive. And then our negative. And I've cut it too short. So let's see if we can just kind of pull a little wire out. There we go. Make sure you don't accidentally desolder the diode. Okay, there we go. Now I recommend putting some RTV next to the over the wire, just so it doesn't fatigue, work harden, break off. But that's pretty much it as far as wiring and the instrument cluster for the oil pressure gauge. Now, if you're doing the voltmeter, the process is going to be identical. You're going to take the faceplate off. You're going to take out the two screws that secure the voltmeter, and then the connections are labeled. So this screw is negative, this screw is positive, and the voltmeter is just going to have two leads, just positive, negative. Okay, so at this point, you want to put it in the truck or 4Runner. You want to turn your key on, make sure the display comes on. It should come on with key on power. Make sure that your temperature gauge still works. And then go ahead and install your oil pressure gauge. I'm not going to cover this because it's very simple. It's just, if you look up oil pressure gauge or oil pressure sensor, removal and installation on either 22RE or 3VZ, it's pretty basic. You just got to make sure you either get an adapter or rethread this so it'll match the block. And then replace your connector with a simple spade terminal and plug it in. That's pretty much it. That's the whole process. After you test everything, then make sure to test everything before you put your cluster, before you put your interior back together, because it would be pretty lame to get it together and then it's not working. But yeah, if you have any questions, comment, just leave them in the comments. I'll try and get to them. I might make a follow-up video to answer some of those questions. But that's basically it. All right, thank you for watching. Bye.